Today, the ground will tremble as we bring two heavyweights to duke it out in a fight to the death. On one end, the most terrifying and powerful land predator of all time, the ultra heavyweight of all carnivores, the Tyrannosaurus Rex. On the other end, a herbivorous titan whose strength, intelligence, and temperamental attitude made it one of the most dangerous land animals in history, the Palaeoloxodon. These two monsters' abilities will be put to the test, comparing each other's strengths, weaknesses, and weapons to determine who will win in a confrontation, who will live, and who will perish. This is reptile versus mammal, tooth versus tusk. Who will win? Find out at the end on Gojicenter's Monster Faceoff. Number 1. Mass. In this battle of heavyweights, the contestant that wins this edge will prove to be the one who is not only heavier, but also the one who is able to manage its weight via mass distribution. Before we start determining the size and weight of both of these extinct animals, we need to note that these have two maximum sizes. One is the maximum and likely size, and the second being the largest speculative size. In the present-day world, we witness some animals that are abnormally larger or smaller than their average proportions. The same most definitely occurred with extinct creatures like the T-Rex. With this in mind, we'll release a full-grown, robust adult T-Rex that aligns with the current known metrics instead of a speculative, overgrown specimen. Fortunately, this is the best studied dinosaur of all time, so sticking with average metrics will give us more accurate stats when it comes to covering things like speed, agility, bite force, etc. Giving us a T-Rex with a height of 4 meters on a neutral stance, 5 meters on a raised stance, and around 13 meters in length. This muscular T-Rex will come in at 10,400 kilograms, more than 11 tons. After the dinosaurs, there weren't that many creatures that could surpass the mass of the bigger non-sauropod dinosaurs, except for two groups, the hornless rhinos and the proboscideans, producing creatures that surpass 16 tons, with the Palaeoloxodon filling the top rank of the latter group. The exact size of this animal is still a huge debated topic. For this reason, we'll send over the largest plausible and supported size for the paleo, not the largest speculative. To figure this out, we can rely on femur size, which is the best indicator to tell us how big these guys could grow. These could vary in size, ranging from a 1.5 meter one to a 1.7 meter long one to a strange anomaly measuring 2 whole meters. Since we used an average-sized Rex, it's only fair to also use an average supported size for the paleo. This rounds down the mass of this animal to 18 to 20,000 kilograms instead of the speculative 25,000 kilograms. This metric was also supported by Dr. Laramendi, who also gave the paleo the weight of 22 tons. In terms of height, we have a paleo that measures a whopping 5 meters in height. Lengthwise, we can see this in two ways, with tusks and tail extended or without them. Without them, the paleo measures 7.25 meters, but if we add the tusks, which, by the way, are considered the largest teeth in the animal kingdom, the paleo could reach 11 meters in total length, rivaling the entire body length of the T-Rex. So, who wins the edge here? Now we must consider body types. One is an elongated biped with moderate mass but at a deficit for height and stability. The other is taller and wider but at the cost of being heavier. However, the paleo's weight is distributed on 4 points of contact with the ground, not only making it more difficult to topple over, but also distributing the weight more evenly as it makes contact with the ground. But also, since this is a battle of heavyweights, having more weight behind any attacking blow will prove critical, increasing the likelihood of toppling over the opponent, which is the case for the paleo. For this reason, and for having a greater amount of mass, the paleo takes the first edge in overall mass. Number 2. Armor. The creature that wins this edge will outperform the opponent in the following metric, whose skin and corporal build can soak up or repel the damage inflicted by the opponent. Now, upon first glance, these two don't necessarily have anything covering them that we would immediately identify as armor. But there is more than meets the eye here. Both of these animals did live in hot climates, meaning that there was no real reason to be mostly covered by feathers or fur in the paleo's case. The skin of both of these animals did allow for heat regulation. The skin of the T-Rex is currently a topic of debate, especially since this animal came from the chiefly feathered Coelurosaur family. But being the largest tyrannosaurid living in hot Northern American climates is evidence that this animal was most likely lacking a feathered coverage as an adult, meaning that the Rex won't rely on any padded protection in this fight, leaving that task to the scaly skin. This took the form of tiny, non-overlapping scales similar to that of cassowaries and lacking the bony element present in modern-day monitor lizards, whose hide acts more or less like chainmail. Despite this, the T-Rex did have one bit of armor that was hidden from plain sight. Underneath, we find a breastplate of sorts known as a gastralia, a set of ribs covering this underlying region, helping it take impacts to the stomach. Very useful since the T-Rex's small arms wouldn't be of much help in the event that the Rex trips over. The Paleo stomps into the analysis platform with an interesting type of hide. The Paleo did live during the last ice age in the Indian South Asian regions, meaning that temperatures back then were a lot cooler in that region. Despite this, it is believed that this animal's large size helped insulate it enough for it to not need the shaggy coats of fur and blubber seen in woolly and steppe mammoths. This does not mean that its skin was thin. On the contrary, even present-day elephants have tough, elastic, and flexible hides, making it most difficult to pierce. Scaling up to the skin of the Paleo only proves as evidence that this skin would serve as a shock absorber of sorts for any traumatic bites, heavily mitigating the damage of massive bite forces. This thickness of skin would vary by region. The flanks, limbs, and neck would have around 3.5 inches of epidermis, dermis, and fat. Doesn't sound like much, but remember, these are folding layers of flexible skin covering really dense musculature. This skin also serves another purpose, venting out excess heat. Stored water in these wrinkles would absorb the heat and leave the body via evaporation, not only serving as armor, but also heat expulsion. So, who has better armor? Note that we are dealing with different types of weapons, tusks, and crushing bites. In the T-Rex's case, its thinner skin wouldn't really provide much protection against a puncture wound from a 3-meter tusk. Even with the gastralia, an impact from the tusks would completely miss this plate of armor. In contrast, the Paleo skin and the dense musculature underneath would aid in absorbing a bite. Sure, the teeth will pierce, but not without the skin bending and absorbing some of the damaging force. This one is close, but because an injury from a tusk is harder to repel with the Rex's skin, the Paleo once again takes an edge when it comes to armor. Number 3, agility. Right now, we're about to grant a critical edge to the animal that maneuvers best around the battlefield whilst conserving energy. The biggest difference between the combatants is that one is a bipedal with wide feet and the other is a quadruped with column-like appendages. Both are pretty effective when it comes to rotation, but the physics vary quite a bit. The T-Rex has the advantage of being part of a lineage that was more agile than most other predatory dinosaurs. Its ancestors were adapted for maneuvering through dense terrain and spending time on trees thanks to a unique hip design that other big theropods did not have. The ilia allowed this 13-meter-long animal to change its directions alarmingly fast. That is, with wider turns, but given that these wide turns allow it to conserve energy, there was almost no need for the T-Rex to wind up speed to continue going as fast. Additionally, its wider feet and long tail would aid it in keeping optimal balance, preventing it from toppling over while making abrupt turns. The Paleo, as well as modern-day elephants, had relatively long legs for animals of their mass. This along with a higher center of gravity. They were also very wide, meaning that toppling this guy over would prove more difficult. But would this guy turn faster than a T-Rex? Being wide with a relatively short body length means that their body mass is jumbled up into a small area, meaning that this animal could quickly turn around using its heavy head as a way to quickly gain momentum to turn 180 degrees. This maneuver is seen in elephants today as well, making the Paleo really difficult to flank if it's standing still. Also, elephants have the ability to open their frontal legs wide, aiding them in stopping and turning relatively quick for an animal of their size, ironically making this animal better at pursuit if it needs to chase down another opponent. Despite this, the fact that the T-Rex can still conserve momentum while making alarmingly quick turns shows that the bipedal system in this case is better and more energy efficient than the quadrupedal when it comes to agility, giving the Rex its first edge in a locomotive category. But will the Rex tally another edge in directional movement? Number 4, speed, or how fast can the combatants move around the battlefield. Figuring this out will probably be one of the most difficult ones to determine in this fight, given that both of these animals aren't alive today, and we're limited to highly fluctuating studies. So we'll stick to the fundamentals for this one. Bipedal and quadrupedal body types have very different ways to push their weight along the x-axis. Bipeds typically use less energy to move from point A to point B thanks to their proportionally larger muscle mass on their legs, but at the cost of needing to pay more attention to balance. Quadrupeds in some cases are faster because they have more limbs pushing their weight off the ground. But is this the case with these two animals? A study held in 2017 suggested that the top speed of the T-Rex would hit around 17 miles per hour. However, reaching a top speed in a fight is only viable in the event that you're 100% certain that you'll culminate a sprint with an effective hit or running away during a retreat. A T-Rex maintaining speeds of 17 miles per hour during a fight makes no sense, since maintaining this would overtax its energy reserves. Both the Paleo and Rex couldn't perform a running gait, but rather do what's called a fast walk, keeping at least 1 foot on the ground at all times. Believe it or not, modern-day African elephants have been clocked at the alarming speeds of 25 miles per hour. Such speeds are attained by efficient movements on their hind limbs and shock-absorbing pads on their feet. But can our Paleo reach these speeds? Most likely not. The rule here is that the larger the elephant, the slower it gets. Our 22-ton animal is actually more related to the modern-day African elephant, who, by the way, have proportionally longer legs compared to their body. Also, it's been noted that smaller elephants are indeed faster than their adult counterparts. So, comparatively, it's reasonable to presume that these African counterparts were much faster than Palaeoloxodon, who would most likely max out at a little over 10 miles per hour. Lastly, it's important to account that energy consumption is less for a biped than for a quadruped, meaning that in this case, not only will the T-Rex move faster, but also be able to maintain a speed for a longer time. For this locomotive category, the edge will go to the T-Rex. Number 5, stamina. Before we find out who wins the senses and intelligence attributes, let's figure out who could carry out the battle for the longest time if it turns out to be a longer battle than expected. Heat stress is the ultimate enemy of large animals because they struggle more when it comes to getting rid of heat compared to smaller animals. Combine this with warm-blooded metabolisms and we're talking about dangerous levels of heat stress, fatigue, and even organ damage. Fortunately for the Rex, its body, as well as that of other theropods, are optimally made for high-energy efficient locomotion. The majority of its locomotive muscles were focused on the T-Rex's legs, like the caudofemoralis muscle, connecting the upper leg and tail, providing more momentum with each stride. This helps conserve energy while keeping a brisk pace. Additionally, these animals would have internal air chambers found in birds, pumping air through the muscles, organs, and blood, venting off heat with each breath. This adaptation is the chief reason why ostriches can run for prolonged periods, in contrast to quadrupedal mammals who have to stop and rest, lest they risk heat stroke and muscle damage. Speaking of which, the Paleo does bypass some of these issues thanks to some neat adaptations mentioned earlier. The skin, which gets rid of heat much more efficiently. Additionally, elephants have connective tissues directly linking their lungs to their diaphragm, helping them open and close the lungs with more force, venting off the heat. But which one of these two can keep the fight going longer? The difference in this case is found in the mass. Even though these animals have around the same surface area, we find that the musculature of the Paleo is a lot more dense, making it more difficult for it to expel heat as fast as the T-Rex. Furthermore, quadrupeds do reach heat exhaustion faster because they require more energy to move around, putting the T-Rex ahead with a third edge in stamina. Number 6, senses. We're quickly going to determine who can sense the opponent first, gauging the likelihood of an ambush during the fight, and being aware of each other's whereabouts during combat. We'll focus on 3: vision, hearing, and smell. There are very few animals that can surpass the Rex when it comes to vision. Its forward-facing eyes granted a very wide binocular field of vision, better than most predatory birds alive today, meaning the Rex could identify objects much further than humans can. This, along with its flexible neck, will allow the Rex to lock onto the Paleo much easier. The Paleo's vision, on the other hand, does not grant it the same binocular vision the T-Rex possesses. Its head shape causes it to have a thin blind spot directly in front of its face. This can be easily fixed with a gentle head swivel. Elephants do have above-average vision in comparison to other mammals, good enough to accurately pinpoint the location of opponents on a 3-dimensional plane, and hurling objects towards these targets with surprisingly good accuracy. They only have issues with seeing things past 50 meters, but what makes the Paleo's vision special is that they do have extremely wide monocular vision, almost being able to practically see behind itself. Hearing-wise, the Paleo does not only have excellent hearing ability thanks to its ears, but also is able to hear with its feet. That's right, modern-day elephants as well as the Paleo would have had the ability to pick up extremely low-frequency sounds, stuff that humans will not even be aware of. In this scenario, the Paleo will be able to pick up on the low-frequency sounds emitted by the enlarged vocal cords emitted by the T-Rex, making the elephant aware of the T-Rex's presence miles away. T-Rex could do the same, but with a specialized organ known as a cochlea, which in the T-Rex's case was longer than usual, allowing it to pick up similar frequencies as the Paleo. In terms of smell, it's important to note that T-Rexes have a large majority of their brain devoted to the sense of smell, being able to pick up small particles in the air from various animals and other organic materials and distinguish them with astonishing accuracy. But the Paleo is also not too far behind. It's been noted that elephants have a better sense of smell than most other land-dwelling animals alive today, even better than most dogs, thanks to the largest olfactory bulb of any land mammal, able to pick things up from 12 miles away. So, who wins here? Both the Paleo and Rex have close to perfect hearing and sense of smell, but when it comes to close-range vision during the midst of combat, the Rex proves superior. This one was really close, but for combat purposes, the T-Rex takes a 4th edge in senses. Number 7. Intelligence. Before we take a look at their weapons, we'll take a look at the brain power behind the wielding of this weaponry. Admittedly, both of these creatures will be able to outdo each other in some regards, such as discerning information attained through their senses, communication between their own kin, or reacting to things that the other may not pick up on, such as smell or sound. The edge in this category will be given to the one with better problem-solving capability in this specific scenario, not overall intelligence. The T-Rex, as far as theropods go, was likely one of the smartest. This thanks to plenty of evidence that suggests that they were social animals that lived in long-term family units and collaborated during hunting. So much that there is more evidence proving that T-Rexes were social hunters than what we have of raptors. Many studies have claimed that the brain of the T-Rex was as capable as that of primates. What was really found was that T-Rex had a similar neuron count to that as baboons. Neuron count can correlate with how quickly information is transmitted within the brain, thus helping us roughly understand how fast the T-Rex could solve problems. What type of problems? Earlier we discussed that the Rex had exceptional eyesight, smell, and hearing. It's only reasonable for an animal with such capabilities to process information effectively and with purpose, aiding the Rex with decision-making, identifying the weaknesses and strengths of an opposing animal, and determining how to attack an animal given its weaponry. This can be compiled into something known as strategy. Animals today, such as predatory birds and other mammalian predators, use this exact method to bring down large prey and go as far as storing past experiences in their memory. The Paleos, as well as modern-day elephants' problem-solving skills, are their most impressive skill set in regards to battle intelligence. Bringing in the largest brain of any land animal in existence, this animal is no pushover. On the contrary, there have been many accounts of the elephant's frightening levels of intelligence, laying bare the fact that they're not only thinkers, but also solvers, at the level of dolphins and smarter primates. Also, going as far as constantly displaying concrete evidence of social interaction, emotion, exploration, and advanced memory, almost equally matching that of chimpanzees. Elephants are also one of the very few species who have passed a mirror test, capable of recognizing themselves individually and even using the mirror to scrutinize their own facial features. Even some other species of primates, birds, and other predatory mammals would fail and perceive the mirror as another individual, despite making identical movements. Elephants, when confronted with an unfamiliar element, will in most cases become observant, analyzing the unfamiliar element from top to bottom, identifying things like pointy objects, size, and classifying them as a threat or other. This is done remarkably fast as well. Consider that the elephant's cortical neuron count is believed to be 5.6 billion neurons, in contrast to the T-Rex's speculated 3.3. In this battle scenario, the Paleo would have likely shared the same attributes as modern-day elephants. This, once again, is very close, but in this battle category, we find that elephant big brains and fast discernment will win it an edge when it comes to battle intelligence. Now, let's cover these animals' weapons. Number 8. Close-range weapons. Studying this category will be interesting, given that we are in fact comparing the effectiveness between the most powerful bite of any land predator against the largest set of teeth in the animal kingdom. Introducing these T-Rex teeth is unnecessary. They comprise one of the most renowned dental sets in the fossil record, measuring up to 6 inches from the base of the crown, deeply rooted into the jaw with roughly the same length as the top, and having rectangular serrations, creating folds of dentin. These most definitely needed to be robust, since they were the business end of the most devastating bite forces in history. But how strong? PSI, or pounds per square inch, is a metric that can highly fluctuate depending on how many teeth are piercing any given surface. PSI will increase in certain areas of the jaw. In the T-Rex's case, we are looking at figures from 8 to 10,000 PSI. And if the T-Rex gets a good grip and is given time to crunch down for long enough, this could go up to 12,000. For reference, this is enough force to crunch through the hood of a small car. Or if we take a more graphic route, this is enough to effortlessly bite a cow in two. T-Rex scat and remains of injured prey back this up with remarkable detail. T-Rex was capable of crushing skulls, cracking ceratopsian frills, and crunching hadrosaur bones. This is without mentioning its powerful neck, which allowed the Rex to rip flesh, tendons, and bones right off the ligaments. As powerful as this was, however, this bite did come with some limitations. Note that the optimum biting angle of a T-Rex was at around 28 degrees. If for whatever reason this animal was forced to open its mouth wider and then attempt to clamp, the bite force would end up getting taxed due to the muscles already being stretched too wide, limiting these bites to narrower areas such as the neck of a dinosaur or another animal's limbs. How does this compare to the Paleo's tusks? For starters, let's reiterate the fact that these aren't your typical set of tusks. These were the largest and heaviest to ever exist. Deeply rooted in the skull of the Paleo, similar to modern-day elephants, but differs in that these were straighter, giving it the name straight-tusked elephant. These had many uses, such as digging, breaking down trees, displays of power, and of course, combat. But how do elephants use tusks? These smart animals would make use of precise fencing and goring maneuvers seen in their modern-day relatives. The elephant will lower its head to allow these tips of the tusks to penetrate. Once puncturing the opponent, these animals will proceed to raise their heads to push the tusk deeper, as if they know that the deeper the wound, the more fatal. There's more to this, though. To provide a rough numerical estimate of how much force is inflicted from the tips of the Paleo's tusks, we resort to the square-cubed law using the African elephant as a base model to calculate the mass of the head, neck muscles, and upper body, pushing all its forward momentum to these tips. The result would be an impact that strikes at about 8,702 psi. But what if the Paleo was moving at top speed? At 4.5 meters per second, this jumps up to a staggering 26,000 psi. This assuming it was a perfect hit. But if this tusk was particularly sharp and if the Rex was moving towards the tusk, the force would be even greater. Even if the Paleo was not moving, the T-Rex's skin wouldn't be enough to stop one tusk from sinking deep into a flat surface area, such as its soft belly or leg muscle. However, if the T-Rex manages to land a good bite to the Paleo, this creature would likely get handicapped if the Rex is given enough time to crush down into its femur. A bite to the neck, and this proves fatal. To properly give this edge, we must consider the probability of these two successfully using these weapons against each other. Consider that if the Rex is to actually land a bite on the Paleo's limbs, it will have to first outmaneuver an animal that can already rotate really quickly. And if it aims for the neck, it will have to first avoid getting hit by tusks that can bring down a large animal with one hit. And after, hope it doesn't get trampled by an already moving Paleo. This guy is not going to get brought down with just one bite. The Paleo also has it somewhat difficult. Accurately finding the belly of the Rex will not be easy due to its superior agility. Note that in this fight, both of these animals will always have their heads facing each other, so it is inevitable that these two weapons, Tooth and Tusk, will clash in order to reach each other's weaknesses. The winner of this edge will have to wait a little longer. It's now time to find out what happens when Tooth meets Tusk. Number 8.5, Tooth versus Tusk. An adult T-Rex of these proportions will already be accustomed to battling horned dinosaurs and is well aware of the damage that these can inflict. In response, the T-Rex would sometimes bite the horns in an attempt to break them, as to mitigate the damage done by them and reduce the probability of them piercing deep. Except now we're talking about a much stronger material to bite through. These aren't keratin-layered horns like those of a Triceratops. We are talking about dentin and enamel. These two organic materials are the most resistant found in any animal, with enamel having failure points of 384 megapascals and dentin at 297, much higher than bone's 115 megapascals. This is important because elephant tusks are made of almost pure dentin, 2.5 times harder than bone. The ends of these are tipped with enamel, which does wear off with age. The end result is a tusk that is most difficult to break. In this fight, the T-Rex will identify these are the primary threat, meaning that these must be destroyed, bringing us here. If the Rex manages to clamp its jaws around one, we find that this jaw opening is within the comfortable range of the Rex's biting angle, securing the strongest bite possible. But not only that, the reduced amount of teeth used to bite and smaller surface area to bite on means higher PSI. If just 16 teeth manage to press into the tusk, we have readings that would estimate higher than 26,000, just right about where you need to pierce dentin. But that's assuming this tusk remains perfectly still, which it won't. We must also account for the fact that dentin is a bit flexible, so this will bend before it cracks, making breaking this in one single bite extremely difficult, even for the Rex. So will the teeth be able to disarm the Paleo? The answer is yes and no. Once the Rex sinks its teeth, the force emitted by its bite will have been strong enough to crack, but the constant movement of the Paleo and strength behind its swings would most likely prevent the Rex from crunching through. However, this does mean that this tusk is compromised and likely to break in the midst of combat. The edge comes down to probability. The chances of the T-Rex getting past the tusks are really low, given the size and area covered by each swing, meaning that in this battle, the T-Rex will get hit before it ever kills the Paleo. If it does get past the tips, the elephant will resort to blunt hits from its body and trampling, shrugging the T-Rex away, forcing it to risk life and limb once again facing these tusks. For this reason, whoever wins the edge will be a matter of circumstance, depending on other factors discussed in this battle analysis, leaving this to the simulator to determine. For now, it will remain as a draw for both contestants. Number 9. Auxiliary Weapons. What else do these monsters bring to the arena? In the T-Rex's case, we have a set of 2 arms tipped with 2 claws which were suspected to be used for gripping prey while bringing it down. These are by no means weak, being able to pick up 440 pounds each. But will these be useful in this fight? Considering that the Paleo wouldn't have been much bigger than anything the T-Rex hunted down and taller, using these to latch onto the side of the Paleo would be more detrimental than helpful, putting it in an awkward position to bite down on the Paleo and even putting it in an unstable posture. Apart from its 2 claws and bite, the T-Rex does not have much to offer in terms of weapons, other than sheer mass. But as seen earlier, this is heavily bypassed by the Paleo. Speaking of which, this animal brings a very useful trunk to the battlefield. Being the most iconic trait of proboscideans, this trunk would have been composed of more than 40,000 facial muscles, serving as an elongated upper lip, making this thing deceptively powerful. Consider that small Asian elephants can lift over 660 pounds. Scaling up to the Paleo and keeping in mind that an animal scaled up to double the size would increase its physical strength by 30 to 80%, we find that the Paleo would probably be able to pick up objects weighing at between 1,100 to 1,400 pounds. This is not nearly enough to pick up a Rex, but it sure does supply enough force for a good grip. Combine this with the strength of the neck and forelimbs, and we're talking about a creature that could grab a hold of the Rex's limbs or tail and severely unstable the Rex. Upon first glance, this trunk would be an unfamiliar body part for the T-Rex, since it would have never encountered anything similar to this before, and wouldn't register it as a threat until it sees it in action. But there's more. Elephants are notorious for using their feet to trample foes to the ground, rolling them mercilessly in combination with their trunk and tusks, stepping on them, rupturing any organs that find itself underneath the elephant. If for whatever reason the Rex loses its balance and falls, it runs the risk of getting mercilessly crushed by the Paleo. For this reason, the Paleo gets a clear edge when it comes to auxiliary weapons. We are very close to unleashing these two in the arena, but before that, we must really quickly run over some weaknesses. Number 10. Vulnerabilities. Both of the combatants were heavyweights built to withstand anything the animal kingdom threw at them. In the T-Rex's case, the most dangerous animal to confront would either be a full-grown bull triceratops or another T-Rex. Same with the opponent. In the Paleo's case, the most dangerous creature would be another similarly sized specimen of its own kind. Because they would face their own kin, most of the injuries inflicted on each other would be inflicted on the head or upper torso, as to defend the more vulnerable areas behind the head. So, to answer who wins the edge here will not only mean who has a greater weakness, but also who is more capable of defending them. The T-Rex was one of the most resilient animals of all time, with over half of adult T-Rex specimens displaying battle scars inflicted by other T-Rexes. These injuries admittedly wouldn't be inflicted at full force, given that these weren't meant to be lethal. However, this does mean that the head of a T-Rex could withstand a lot of heavy blows. T-Rex skull structure was reinforced around the eyes, brain case, and jaw, protecting the throat, meaning that this animal wouldn't be knocked out as easily as other similar-sized animals. Combining this resistant head with its improved agility, the T-Rex would most likely place its head between the tusks and its own vulnerable soft belly, knowing very well that one blow could end the fight. The Rex in this battle would be relatively safe from a lethal blow as long as it stays in this posture. This changes if the Rex is toppled over. The Paleo, on the other hand, is taller than the T-Rex, making any attacks from above inexistent. Despite this Paleo's neck is within attainable range for the Rex. If the Rex is lucky and manages to reach the neck, a bite held long enough would be catastrophic for the Paleo. Note, however, that this is guarded by a short, muscular neck whose purpose is to hold one of the heaviest heads of all time. Getting to this would mean putting itself at the mercy of the tusks and its trampling maneuver. A more attainable target would be the legs, as these would comfortably fit inside the jaws of the Rex. If held long enough, this Rex would inflict a critical blow to change the tide of battle. But one bite is not enough, and the Paleo is not here to take any. Just like the Rex, the elephant will try to keep its head between those jaws and its own vulnerable spots. Because of this, we find that both methodologies of defense are the exact same for both of these creatures, making this a close final draw for both combatants. As this battle begins to form, there is one last critical factor that will weigh heavily in this fight: the X Factor. In this battle scenario, both the T-Rex and the Paleo will have seen each other for the first time, which means that a very big aspect to take into account in this simulation is unfamiliarity with each other. And this begins before they even lock eyes on each other. Recall that both of these animals will sense each other's presence from miles away, either through hearing or smell. A T-Rex seeing something that smelled like the tiny animals it lived around growing to these gargantuan proportions would be alarming, causing a lag in strategy development. This unfamiliarity would only worsen once it effortlessly gets shoved around by an animal of similar size but of much greater weight. The Paleo would have never faced anything as large as a T-Rex. But even if the Paleo is a bit taller than the Rex and around the same overall length, this animal will assume that the T-Rex is around as heavy as itself, even though it isn't. In the mind of the Paleo, big animals such as itself will not display the level of agility the T-Rex is capable of. How these factors play out in the upcoming battle will be heavily determined by their problem-solving and decision-making skills. We are now ready to unleash these two monsters into the battle arena. The powerful Tyrannosaurus Rex brings to the battle greater agility, faster moving speeds, winning the edges in both stamina and senses. The Palaeoloxodon wins the edge in having more mass than its opponent, better armor, and winning the edge in problem solving and auxiliary weaponry. Both of the combatants take a highly contested draw in primary weaponry and ability to defend their vulnerable points. The battleground has been prepared. The combatants ready. Coming up, the Tyrannosaurus Rex versus Palaeoloxodon Pneumaticus. In this simulation, we find that the Palaeoloxodon comes out as the victor in this battle. So, why did the Paleo win? The factors that contributed heavily in this fight were mass, intelligence, and both weapon categories. The possibility of there being an ambush in this fight was nullified due to both creatures' senses, allowing them to notice each other from very far away. Upon locking into each other, both territorial creatures make it clear that none of them are backing away. Challenge accepted. The Paleo, thinking that this similarly sized Rex is just as heavy, winds up a fast charge to properly counter the mass of its opponent. The Rex, facing similar scenarios against horned dinosaurs, knows what to do, and with its superior agility surprises the Paleo by avoiding the charge and quickly targeting the hind leg of the mammal. But the Paleo does not stand idle. Its thicker skin does absorb most of the initial force, but having never felt anything like this bite in the past, the Paleo quickly leverages its trunk and tusks to get a good hold of the Rex's rear body, attempting to shove it back. But to its surprise, the T-Rex turned out lighter than expected. The Rex, surprised at the density of its opponent, and the Paleo of the Rex's agility, both regain steady footing. They just now learned something new about each other. In response, the elephant begins to swivel its head to ensure he has the Rex in its sight of vision. The Rex tests the Paleo by lunging forward, but the reach of these tusks manages to injure the head of the Rex. No big deal, just a little more careful next time. The objective now is to get past those tusks to try to get to the softer limbs, but the Paleo easily keeps the Rex at bay with its wide swings. At this point, it comes down to whoever makes the first mistake. The angry Paleo lunges forward, and the Rex dodges and decides to disarm the Paleo by firmly holding on to the tusks. Success! Upon feeling the teeth sink, the Paleo panics and violently shakes the T-Rex off. The weakened tusk breaks upon hitting the ground, but in doing so, it manages to hold the T-Rex for a brief moment. Seeing that the strong reptile is stepping backwards, escaping the grip, the Paleo quickly pushes the Rex backwards, making it lose its footing. The Rex has now hit the floor, and the Paleo wastes no time. Pure mass, tusk, brains, and muscle prove to be too much for this T-Rex. If these animals did indeed live at the same time at the same place, over time we would have encountered various scenarios. Similar to modern-day rivalries between predator and prey, both animals would have over time adopted strategies to bring each other down, using more effective methods of ambushing, pack hunting, or just simply repeatedly targeting the opponent's weakness. Today, the Paleo achieved the seemingly impossible, taking down the most powerful land predator to ever exist. Special thanks to our team of researchers, animators, and artists that helped bring this episode to life. If you want to support the channel, know who will fight next, and get in on some cool behind the scenes, please join our YouTube memberships. For more info on these videos, go visit Gojicenter.com to view fun follow-up info on these fights.